The Story of John Stryker, Part 1. A 65-year-old war veteran went to the hospital due to complications with his pacemaker. Little does this old man know, his pacemaker is a failed government-issued weapon. John Stryker was drafted to the Army at the age of 16. With his father being a veteran himself, and fear of going to jail, John went straight to boot camp. As soon as he got there, they tested everything from his performance in the field, lung capacity, stamina, and memory. He scored way above average. The recruiters took note. Within 1 week of his training, they put him in a special class with other high-ranking individuals. They were never meant to interact with each other. They only knew they were competing. The commanding officers told him he had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. From here on out, John is a top-secret agent for the government. He couldn't discuss what was being done to him, not even to his parents. So he didn't say anything. A few weeks went by, and the special operations doctors had a meeting with John, letting him know that he had been selected for an enhancement surgery. Obviously, John was very scared and wanted to tell his parents but couldn't. He knew the lines were being tapped. Even if he did try, the call would drop before he would get anything of importance out. And with his dad being a veteran, he already knew he wouldn't want to hear anything he had to say knowing that it was top secret. So he kept his mouth shut. The doctors told him he's in good care and they have the best doctors in the whole world, so there will not be any complications. With that, John went under the knife. He woke up in pain in what felt like weeks later. Going in and out of consciousness, he remembers hearing a conversation between some of the doctors, and one yelling he could have been killed. "What did you do to me?" exclaimed John. The doctors explained that they put a state-of-the-art pacemaker in him. A few more weeks went by. John slowly got better. The doctors ran test after test. They pushed him harder and harder, but there was nothing different about John. So the Army scrapped the project, destroyed all the data. He went back to basic camp, went to war, came home. John lived his life as a normal person, found love, had a wife and stepchildren, lost his parents, lost his wife, and the kids didn't want anything to do with him. So here we are at the hospital with John, thinking that his time is coming. After losing everybody in his life, it's finally his turn. But the doctors look him over and they see nothing wrong with him whatsoever. They told him he should look after his mental health and see a psychiatrist. With that, John decided to walk home, since there was nothing wrong with him. On the way home, a dog began to chase him. Now, feeling his age, his knees begin to buckle as the dog creeps closer. He looked around and yelled for help, but there was nobody around. He ran and ran and ran as fast as he could. His heart was pumping. He was scared. He was having a heart attack. He jumped over a fence and landed on a downed electrical wire. Suddenly, John collapsed. He woke up hearing the dog that was chasing him getting closer and closer. He sat up feeling oddly refreshed. What just happened? He wondered. He looked around, got up, and continued to start running. Without hesitation, John ran down the block within seconds. Faster than he's ever run before in his entire life. Faster than Usain Bolt. Going back to the hospital, John couldn't help but wonder, why, how is this happening? He told the doctors that he just outran a dog, and he thinks he's faster than Usain Bolt. They looked him over once again and told him to go home. Drink plenty of water and make sure you call a mental health specialist. What John didn't know is that the pacemaker the doctors put in him while he was in the Army was never activated properly. John's body literally had to die to reset itself once it was in him. The next morning, John had on his mind what had happened the day before. He was a smart man and knew that it had something to do with his pacemaker. He researched for days until he came across an online article about government conspiracies. One of the tabs read, "Heart failure." "That's got to be the one I'm looking for," exclaimed John. He clicked on it and filled out some information, and all he had to do was wait for a response. In the meantime, he called up some old buddies from the Army. Only 2 were still around, Everybody else was dead. He asked both if they knew anything about secret experiments on soldiers. Of course, neither of them knew what he was talking about, on the record. Off the record, they gave him the eyes that tell it all. Once it's top secret, you shouldn't share it. You're supposed to take that to the grave no matter what it is, said Randall. Jared agreed, adding on, let sleeping dogs lie, don't dig up the past. They didn't want to hear it. A few days later, John got back on his computer and saw he had emails from the websites he had visited. Most of it was spam except for one. John opens his email, and there it was, all the answers he was looking for. It came from one of the doctors that had done research on the pacemaker itself. John recognized a set of numbers that was at the bottom of the email. Like a flash went off in his head. He remembers the same kind of numbers the Army had for their location when he was training. These were coordinates. The other set of numbers was a date and time. So he realized that the doctor wanted to set up a meeting. So he wrote down the coordinates and got there within seconds. It was a quiet suburban town a few miles from Denver Airport, a 24-hour diner. But he forgot about the time, so John waited for a few hours until the doctor arrived. Eventually, a crazy-looking man came up to John and knew who he was, right away yelling, "Stryker? Is that you?" John remembered this doctor. He never knew his name until now. Dr. Fletcher was the same doctor that was yelling, "We could have killed him." Dr. Fletcher explained that he was young and ambitious and didn't really know what he signed up for. He told him, almost in a rushing manner, how sorry he was. He just wants to make things right, and how much he didn't mean to destroy anybody's lives. They both ordered coffee and some breakfast. Over their meal, Dr. Fletcher told him about the operation and his special government-issued pacemaker. The pacemaker was bio-enhanced, meaning the pacemaker became part of the subject. I mean you. It was made with an indestructible metal and filled with nanobots, and over time, the nanobots replaced all Joe, your cells, and functioned as your own. Doctor, Fletcher explained. Once John told him about the dog chasing him, the doctor realized that was their mistake. They never stopped his heart. Since they didn't stop his heart, the nanobots built up in his system, slowly healing him. And now, since his heart has been stopped and he has been electrocuted, it activated said doctor. Fletcher. Dr. Fletcher asked him, "Do you remember those tests we had to do?" "Of course," John said. "We designed those tests specifically for you and what your body is able to handle. Your memory should be sharper. You should have enhanced speed. How fast can you go? I think it's called instant recall. No, enhanced photographic instant recall. The nanobots, we're programmed to enhance your natural abilities," the doctor said sporadically. As they were leaving to say goodbye, John noticed a couple of guys in the parking lot smoking cigarettes, speaking in a different language. He didn't think anything of it, so they said their goodbyes and John went home. Dr. Fletcher went back to his hotel room to prepare for his trip back home. John was so excited. He never knew what he was capable of. But then he started to wonder if there was anybody else like him. So he ran to Dr. Fletcher's hotel room where he mentioned he was at. He knocked on the door and there was no answer. He heard a loud crash coming from the room, so he forced himself in. He saw the room was in shambles. "I see the doctor likes to party. I could tell he had a little wild streak in him," said Stryker. John knew something was wrong. As he searched the room, he went to the bathroom and saw the doctor hanging from the shower curtain rod. Dr. Fletcher was dead. He looked around the room a little bit more and saw a letter that read, "I can't stand this world. I'm tired of living in it. Goodbye." Feeling trapped, almost like a setup, he hightailed it out of there. Back at his house now, he can help but wonder why he would do that. Replaying what he saw in the room in his mind, he remembers seeing two people watching him and the doctor at their meeting point. It was the same guys at the diner smoking in the parking lot. What are the chances that I meet up with the doctor that worked on my heart, and in the same day he's dead? Something isn't adding up. Wary, but determined, John goes to the police. He tells them that he's concerned about his friend and he wants them to check on him. John arrives at the hotel with the police. The police asked for a key to get into his room from the desk clerk. They knocked on the door several times. No answer, so they open the door and see a very clean room, with no damage and a suicide note signed by the doctor. The police ruled it a suicide because there was no sign of foul play, no evidence of a struggle, or any fingerprints. John knows that's not how he left the room, so something else is going on here. He knew someone was trying to cover up his murder. John promised to find out what really happened that day and decided to go undercover, simply as Stryker. John Stryker was involved in a very perplexing situation. 65 years old and just getting started. He was a war veteran that had his heart replaced with the weapon and a dead doctor's murder on his hands. A few weeks ago, Dr. Fletcher, the one that researched all the equipment and tests on John and his pacemaker, was murdered. Of course, the police ruled it as a suicide. Now Stryker finds himself getting closer to the murder of the doctor. Learning different languages and dialects, he finally knows what language the mystery man were speaking, which happens to be Swedish. Now, for many people, it may take months, even years, to perfect any language, but for Stryker and his enhanced memory, recall it, only took him a few days. The one overweight, bald mystery agent that was smoking a cigarette was telling the other mystery agent, Mr. Reynolds would surely be disappointed. Not knowing what to do, Stryker goes back to the hotel to see if the doctor may have left him a clue. The desk clerk that happened to be there that night was working. Stryker approaches the desk solemnly and asks the clerk if he remembered anything from that night. He didn't have much to say about Dr. Fletcher at all, except that he seemed a little eccentric and he wanted to leave a watch for his friend Stryker. It was an old Army-issued watch. It was one of the first waterproof watches they gave the cadets. Stryker lost his years ago. He takes it back to his house and starts to inspect it, almost reminiscing about the times he spent on the bunk wondering when he was going to be home. He carves an S in the back of the watch. As he's finishing the essay, the back of the watch pops off. It's a note, Stryker said. It read, "Head doctor on the project would have me killed, Rick Reynolds." Stryker was in awe. He didn't think that it would cost somebody their life. To protect himself, he built a state-of-the-art containment suit. He designed and built from scratch. The back, the chest and arms of the suit are covered in electro-reflective carbon nanotube, camouflaged honeycomb body armor. His helmet is made out of the same material carbon nanotubes, equipped with his homemade non-lethal weapons, such as his power club, a huge graphene club, smoke grenades, tranquilizers, etc. It took him weeks to create it all, infusing his clothing with nanotubes to protect against chemical weapons as well. Now dressed in the newest gear, he goes out to find the head doctor of the project, Mr. Reynolds. Stryker eventually tracks him down to a warehouse facility outside Burbank, California. For a doctor, he sure does have a lot of security. Of course he does. He's evil, said Stryker. Using his enhanced speed and agility, he quietly takes down a guard one by one, 6 on the outside, 6 on the inside, and 1 atop of the stairs, where Mr. Reynolds was waiting, awkwardly, behind bulletproof glass. I thought of everything. You think I wasn't waiting for you? Do you think you're the first one to show up? Come on. I've been doing this for years. People like you show up being ungrateful for this lovely gift that you have. And you want to throw it in my face, like I did something bad to you. When will you people realize we improved you? Exclaimed the doctor. No, you haven't thought of everything, Stryker said as he looked around. You have to breathe in there, don't you? Then Stryker threw a smoke grenade and the air duct. Mr. Reynolds had no choice. It was either to come out or die from the smoke inhalation. The choice is yours, Doc. Not like what I had. I never had a choice. I didn't want to get this procedure done to me. Yeah, I feel special. Hey, I feel great, actually. But guess what? I'm here to repay you the favor, so you could come out or you could die. The choice is yours," exclaimed Stryker. "Well, guess what, you sob. I've had a long one. I don't care. At least I'm going out on top," said Mr. Reynolds as he started to fade. No. You're not going out that easy. I mix my smoke grenades with my tranquilizers. Ha 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 ha. I'm not like you. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to kill you. You are just going to be knocked out for a few hours and wake up with a really bad headache and some new wrist bracelets," exclaimed Stryker as the doctor passed out. Finally, in the doctor's safe room, after reading the owner's manual online, he reset the code. It only took him an hour. Eventually, sirens filled the air. Stryker watching from afar, watching the police as they take the crime syndicate to jail from a tip. The lead detective found a tape labeled "All the Answers Stryker," along with all the doctor's hard drives he saved over the years. It was enough evidence to put them away for a long time. But Mr. Reynolds is a very powerful man and got out of jail. How will Stryker get him now? Where will he find him?